Hi, everybody. How are you? Hi. Good. You good? And it's okay if you're not good. We'll give you love. If you need a hug, you got it. For those of you that are visiting, I already said, but my name is Angie Von Slaughter. I'm the current lead pastor here at One Church. And this past week, if you were here, you got to see Steve speak, who does an excellent job every single time. Yes. Can we say that? Yes. And I can't guarantee I'll be as funny. Sometimes I try, but that man is funny, but inspiring. And I encourage you, if you didn't see last week's message and you want to, please go watch it on YouTube. It was fantastic. And if you're like, how do I find you on YouTube? It's really easy. It's youtube.com/onechurchaz. You can catch up sort of on this whole series we've been doing. Did everyone have a good week? Yes? Except for the fact that Arizona, thought it was Minnesota or something. That was weird. My parents so I'm originally from Prescott up north, and my parents were sending me text messages, and I'm going, this is insane. You know, it was kind of fun to get the hourly updates, like, look how much snow we have, and I expected them to be like, okay, and now we're dead. Because it was bad. It was really bad. I'm glad that Steve was able to speak for me last week. One, because sometimes it's so great to take a week off, and it's amazing to actually be able to hear someone else say something. I can't just encourage myself, so it's fantastic. And I told Steve I actually needed that, and it's weird to say that, but there were many times where I was like, oh, that was for me. So last week I wasn't here. A few of us took a trip to Mexico. And it was actually, it was amazing, and it was our first one that wasn't related to One Church, and I didn't want to post about it because I didn't want to make you all jealous, because I know how much those of you that have gone love the trips. I'm really trying to form even further bonds with the communities that we work with down there. There's such a need, and I also, I honestly, the selfish part is I love how it fills me up and it restores me, and it makes me reminded that humanity is so much bigger than sometimes our small lens. So we are continuing on this series, and actually I should say we're wrapping up the series, a series that was intended to be 3 weeks and ended up taking all sorts of twists and turns and thoughts, and it just kept growing. So we've been on this for nearly 2 months, this series, New Year's Evolution. Do you love my thoughts? It's supposed to be 3 weeks and it's 2 months. This is what you get when you have a pastor that's also a creative. It's sort of like, rein it in, Ange. So for the past 2 months, we've been really focusing on this idea of growth, personal growth and evolution. And stemming all the way back from the beginning of the series, it was this idea of most of us tend to make resolutions. And we wanted to kind of take a different look, which was what would it look like instead of just making resolutions that we know we actually might fail at. Some of us are better at that than others. We might actually fail. What would it look like to actually set more of this long-term goal and a personal check-in? Like, instead of just making these goals, where are we headed? Where are we at right now? Where are we headed as individuals and as a community? And then we really wanted to contemplate, again, personally, communally, the question, who are we becoming? And I think it's a valuable question to ask ourselves often. If you're like me, sometimes I can get caught up with work and life, and many of you know what that's like: work, life, school, kids, college. You fill in the blank, and you sometimes forget you're giving so much to the world, and you forget to check in. How am I? How am I doing? And so asking this question of who are we becoming? Do we like who we're becoming? Sometimes don't even pause to reflect and ask that. Are we headed in the direction that we'd like to go? There's been a couple metaphors circling throughout this theme, and I have noticed I really love metaphors, and so does Steve, so we just kind of played with it and decided, hey, let's just carry these out. And one was describing this season of becoming. One was a practical metaphor that was more of this parable that Jesus tells, And I'm catching some of you up in case this is the first time you're hearing of any of this message. The rest of you are like, yeah, I got it. But this parable that Jesus tells of this old wineskin and new wine. Now the concept on this parable is that you have this newness and you're trying to put it in an old container. And at that point, that wineskin would burst and break if you did that, because this new wine had gases that would expand. And so he paints this picture of newness requires expansion. When you put something that requires expansion into a very old, brittle container that actually isn't built for expansion and growth, chances are both things will break. This newness will be stifled, this old thing will break. So we went with this kind of old wineskins and new wine. But the other metaphor, anyone know the other metaphor we've been using? Journey? Polynesians, yes. That was a random thing I just threw out there about my trip to Hawaii. The Polynesians traveling the Pacific Ocean for 2,000 miles by canoe. We say that every week because I think we're just astonished that humans can do this by canoe. And so it gives you this idea, this framework that sometimes when you're entering the season of newness, it's a long, vast journey, and it requires a lot of energy. And I imagine that took a lot of energy. I imagine there's lots of people that gave up. I imagine there's lots of people that jumped ship. I imagine there's lots of people that didn't bring enough provisions, and maybe we'll not talk about what happened to them. And I imagine it wasn't easy. And I kept thinking about this. This road was not easy for them, but they kept going to new territory because they knew they had to. And I think that we use this metaphor because sometimes when we're in new seasons, that's what it's like. It's like frightening and thrilling all at the same time, uncertain, and yet there's something calling us and we can't say no because we have to leave where we were. And so last week, I liked that Steve spoke about the urgency of evolving. And a lot of times I think we get this idea that evolution and growth just happens because we schedule it in and we pencil it in. Next Tuesday, I'm going to evolve. And it doesn't work that way, ever. I've noticed, if I speak honestly about my own personal life, seasons of growth and evolution always have taken place for me in my hardest, darkest, ugliest times. Anybody with me? I'm not kidding. Not that I can't grow and we can't grow as humans in these beautiful, amazing times. I think there are those. It's a different kind of growth. But for me, it's that crushing, that smashing of the grape, if you will, into this new wine. That's exactly what has happened with me every time. And he talked about this urgency of evolving, and he made a point, which was a really vital point, that if we aren't cautious, that a lot of times what we will do is we will put up walls and set up camp, and we'll stay there. We find this newness. It's like, hey, we found the island. We made it. Now let's camp out, and we're never, ever going to leave. And we do that. We're creatures of habit. We move on to something, and then, okay, let's stay here. Knowing that when we especially talk about life, and especially the spiritual life, this thing flows. And we see this in spirituality and in Christianity often, that we can land on this specific idea, this specific theology, belief or revelation, and then we can set up camp around it, and we become unmovable. We become unwilling to change, and we root our feet in. And then, ironically enough, there's a pattern. Almost every 500 years, we go, just kidding, we're going to change that and leave that behind. And it becomes this pattern. And I remember actually when I was a kid singing this song. Some of you might know it. The words say, I will not be moved. I will not be moved. Just like a tree that's planted by the water, I will not be moved. And it was sort of like this. It was sung with this fierce determination of like, my faith won't be moved. And when I was a kid, I got what it was trying to teach me. But really, as I got older, I thought, it painted this picture that faith is unchanging. For me as a kid, that was sort of this imagery I got was, I can't move, my faith can't move, I am here, unmovable. And what I have grown to experience in my own life, and I think many of you have too, that's why you're in this room, in this church, with a ragtag bunch of weirdos that we all are. I think what has happened is we discovered, wait a minute, our faith is evolving and our faith is expanding, and this is movable. It's a movable force that I don't think I can contain. And so what I started to realize is that you can be like a tree that's planted by the water, and your roots can dig down deep. But you can also be like a tree where your branches are sprawling as far as the eye can see. You can also be a tree that is moved and swayed by the wind. And so you have this groundedness, this sense of groundedness, but also this expansion. Have you ever seen the banyan tree in Hawaii or pictures of it? Banyan tree is wild. I wasn't going to talk about that, but that is instantly the imagery that I got in my head when I'm talking about this tree that's expansive. Banyan tree is wild. It looks like a whole bunch of trees until you learn the history that it's one tree and one root system that literally goes down and goes back up, and it goes down and goes back up. And it's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. And it actually, side note, that's a really great metaphor that maybe I'll follow along in the future for humanity. Because we often think we're separate, and then if we take a look back, we're one tree with the same root system. Side note, that was free. And so you can still be moved by this wind. And Steve mentioned wind, and he mentioned the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit is something that if you're evangelical in your roots, you're like, hallelujah, you get that word. If you're not, you're like, what are you talking about? The ancient Hebrews, they called this word the ruach, which I'm not Hebrew, so that's as close as I can get to that word, the ruach. And the ancient Greeks used the word pneuma. Now, the meaning of this word was wind or breath or spirit. Now, this ruach, pneuma, wind, it's often defined as a vital spirit, soul, or creative force of a person. Now, today we might call this spirit or Holy Spirit, we might call it force or flow or intuition. All of those words, we're talking about this same thing. It's this invisible, yet what feels like movable force. That I think every person on the planet will go, yeah, even if I don't believe in something, I have often felt like something was tugging me. Or I have often felt, you'll hear people say the stars aligned. You'll hear people say the universe provided. We're all talking about this same thing in just different language. This idea that something is at work inside of us, leading us, nudging us, and guiding us through our lives. And I believe this current is ever present with us. But sometimes it takes us a little while before we start to listen to it. And I have been there many, many times in my life where I felt like it was Spirit speaking, and first time I answered the knock right away. And then I felt like it was 1,000 knocks, and I didn't get it. And then I finally said, hello? And it was almost like, hey, where have you been, Angie? I've been speaking to you for a long time. And the thing about wind is it can be gentle, so gentle, or a force to be reckoned with. Wind can be something that will shake you like a hurricane, pulling a tree straight out of the ground, and it can also be very soothing, like a gentle breeze. Pardon me, I'm going to take a drink. I thought I would draw out that awkwardness. I'm quirky. I just have to own it. When I first got this job, I will admit, I tried to be all professional and put together like Aaron, and I quickly discovered I'm not. I'm just not. So I went with it. And the wind can soothe, but it can also evoke this sense of urgency. And some of you know what I'm talking about. There's times in your life where you just feel it. You come up with different words, but you're like, no, my gut told me so. My intuition told me so. The Spirit told me so. I felt this force moving within me. And Steve stated last week that there's a sense of urgency in evolving as individuals and as a faith community. Because quite frankly, in my opinion, we can't afford not to. There's this sense of urgency because we can't afford not to evolve. And I'll tell you this, the path, and this is something to note. We talk about this newness, right? And it's exciting. But I'll tell you this, that sometimes the path to becoming costs you. And it's very true. Sometimes the path to becoming costs you, but the value of who you are becoming is worth more than the cost of staying the same. I'll say that again. in case that was a tongue twister. The path to becoming, it does cost you. It will cost you. But the value of who you are becoming is worth so much more than the cost of staying the same. One of the most defining in my life, one of the most defining moments in my life, if I'm honest, and most of you know this already, but the most defining moment for me was coming out publicly about my sexuality. And I had lived a heavily closeted life. My dad was a pastor when I was a kid, and when he was not, it still didn't matter because we lived in a very strict, very conservative home. So the church and home life and all my friends and the small town I lived in, everything was kind of saying, yeah, you don't be yourself. But for me, I noticed that what ended up surrounding, now you can insert your story here, because here's the thing I've noticed. When we talk about things like this, especially sexuality, and we bring it up, it instantly almost creates this us and them feeling. I'll have you know that every single one of us has if you will, a coming out story. We all have this moment where we have to be honest about who we are. And that we can all agree on. There's a moment where we have to say, this is who I really am. And it's choosing your authentic path. It's choosing who you're supposed to be. And I noticed in that time I was heavily closeted, and my life was full of secrecy and was full of shame. And one day it became obvious, like that ruach, that breath, that intuition, that spirit saying, you have to be honest. You have to be honest. You have to be honest. It just became like a pounding heartbeat that was like, you have to choose this path. And so I knew that I needed to be whole. And there's this beautiful quote by Brene Brown. Who doesn't love Brene Brown, if I can say her name right? Let go of who you think you're supposed to be and embrace who you are. And that's what I had to do, and to be honest, that's still what I'm doing, and I think that's probably what I will always do as a human being, because I think I'm hardwired for that. There's times where I need to be reminded, no, embrace who I'm supposed to be, and not who you think others think you're supposed to be. And so I needed to embrace who I was. And some of you know what I'm talking about. You have moments where you needed to embrace who you were. Fill that in with whatever that case may be. Doesn't matter the subject. That you've been walking around with what I would call under the shadow of others' expectations. Doesn't matter whether it was faith or sexuality or career or gender or race, marital status, you name it. You've been living in the shadow and you needed to step into the light of who the divine created you to be. And I knew that. I knew that the spirit, this ruach, this breath, it was calling me. And it was calling me to be myself, to be a whole and integrated self. Which, to be honest, I think is the call for every human being on this planet. And I knew what this would require. I knew what this would cost. I knew I had to leave the safety of the shore. I knew I had to step into the unknown. I knew it would cost me and there would be casualties. It forever changed the course of my relationships. Some were my friends, and yes, even my parents. To this day, still, it's affected that and changed the course of everything. But I will say this again, who I was becoming was worth every cost. And for a long time after that decision, I felt fragmented and dispersed, sort of like a shattered glass. I was just everywhere. And the casualties from that moment, it left sort of this metaphorical shrapnel around me, if you will. And I didn't know what to do with my faith, didn't know what to do with my doubts, my questions, my hurts, my wounds, myself. And on January 28th, 2015, I stepped foot inside the walls of one church for the very first time. My memory's not that good. I don't know that by heart. I know that because I saved, to commemorate that day, an email that I had sent the founding pastor. And I want to read it to you tonight because I think it's important to hear a little bit about my journey, to hear a little bit about this journey of this place. Hey, Ryan. Funny that I would receive an email from you as I'm watching your video messages right now. Overachiever. My girlfriend Talia and I, we were just girlfriends. That's precious. My girlfriend, Talia, and I went to one church for the very first time yesterday, and I really enjoyed it. Although you were out of town, we truly enjoyed the sermon by Aaron and also meeting him and his wife, Molly. To give you a brief background, Talia and I were both worship pastors, youth leaders, and actively involved in the blank church, I won't name names, for almost a decade. After wrestling with our faith and sexuality, we were outed and ultimately forced out of our ministries. After years of not attending church, then starting a home church, and yet still looking for a church community to call home, our hearts melted. I still get choked up when I think about this. When Aaron, in his opening prayer, thanked God for marriage equality in America, and then followed up stating that the work wasn't done yet. I can't tell you what a defining moment that was for me. I just wanted to thank you, Aaron, and your families for showing God's unending love and grace. We hope to join you again soon, Angie. It's wild to look back at this and read this, and now coming back full circle, know that I get those messages. I get messages from little Angies all over the world that are like, thank you. I'm watching your message right now. Messages of gratitude and joy and hope, messages of me too and I belong. And it's not just pertaining to LGBTQ people. It's all kinds of people saying thank you. And almost every week I get some kind of message that this community, of just what it means to them, and not just to the people inside these walls, but outside these walls. And I think we forget that. We forget that because we're small, we're here, we forget that there's people all over the country and the world that listen. And I wanted, because I think it's encouraging and I think it's important, I wanted to read a little bit of this real quick. These are just quick excerpts. I cannot talk tonight. I'm going to blame it on the cold, but that's not why. It's just me. I wanted to read you short little excerpts of a little bit of some messages that I've gotten from people. This one is from Rachelle, and it says, I just want to say that I'm so grateful for you in One Church. I never could have imagined I'd be saying the words, on my way to church, or the church I go to, and such. I love that I can believe what I believe and yet still feel as though I belong. That speaks infinite volumes to the depth of love that is being created in this divinely unique community. Stephen, he says, just when you think we had decided to step out of organized religion, I had to find one church. Thank you. I didn't know if that was a like, thanks, or yeah. This one, I haven't even shared this with Steve yet, but this one's from someone named Mandy, who says, I came across One Church through a friend that posted a video of Steve McCarthy from the Church Out service. When I saw Steve's video, all I could do was cry. I'm so torn up about faith right now. I left ministry and, well, faith. 3 years ago, I haven't been able to walk in the door of a church since. And after seeing the video, I found myself researching One Church, watching some of your sermon videos, and I felt so compelled to reach out to you. I've never seen a church like One Church, and I have so much hurt from the church, and now I just have so many more questions. I just wanted to say thanks for providing a place like One Church, and I hope one day I'll be able to walk in my truth and find faith again. Friends, these are the messages I would have never, ever received had I not first been willing to evolve. Had I not been willing to step into that person that Spirit was leading me to be, to step into the fullness of myself. Now, the interesting thing to note is that One Church itself has had a few pivotal moments. And how many of you have been with us for longer than a year? How many of you have been with us for longer than, say, 2 years? 3? 4? 5? I feel like we're playing a game. 6? 7? And that's pretty much the beginning. It was like 2 or 3 of you left. So for those of you that have been here for a long time, you know the history. But for those that don't, we have had to make choices and decisions many times on who we wanted to be, and it would cost us. At times we lost critical mass, sometimes not even because of our own doing. Because sometimes when you have people, as we all are, it can get messy, and that's just normal. And choosing to be, first of all, a progressive church isn't easy. Choosing to be a progressive church that says we can engage the head and the heart and rethink some toxic theology wasn't easy. We were flying in the face of a complete opposite direction of the way Christianity was moving. And then choosing to be a place that welcomes the questions instead of quieting them, that wasn't easy. And I think that was one of the best decisions we've ever made. Choosing to go against the grain and be a church that affirms LGBTQ people, that wasn't easy. And we lost some folks. Choosing to be a community that tries to choose love every single time over doctrine and beliefs has not been easy. And this has cost us many times. But I want to say this, the value of who we are becoming, in my opinion, is worth way more the cost of just staying the same. I heard an amen. Any old school amens? You can snap your fingers. Do you step? Some people got that. It's a song. I know, I'm just being silly. The value of who we are becoming, it's worth more than the cost of just staying the same. And so some of you kind of already know where tonight's headed because you're like, I heard Steve speak last week, or I read my email. But One Church, we're at a new threshold, and we need your help. We are at what feels like blatantly obvious. I'll be honest, we've already left the shore. We're somewhere in the canoe. And I feel that. I feel that so strongly with every fiber in my being that the island is already back there. And we're moving. And we need your help. For those of you that have been here longer than a year, you understand all the changes that have been faced. This past year, there's been changes in leadership, changes in location, changes in meeting times. And we know, we're not naive, we know that those were 3 terrible things to do at the same time. We know that. But I want to remind people that while it wasn't ideal, we were forced to face all 3 changes at the same time. Our pastor at that time, so I'll catch you up to speed if you're new. You can get a little bit of church history real quick. Our pastor at the time, he resigned, and our lease was up on our old building, and we couldn't find another viable option. I'll tell you, it's really, really challenging to find a space that you can rent on a Sunday morning, first of all. It narrows it down real quick. I think we had Seventh-day Adventists only that we could rent from at that point. And if those of you that laugh get it, that Seventh-day Adventists meet on Saturday, so Sundays were available. Narrowed it down really quick when you say, oh, by the way, we're progressive and we affirm LGBTQ people. I mean, really, really quick. We had, I think, like just a small handful of options. And there was a lot of hoops that I feel like we kept going through. And so we had to make this decision. And so, in my opinion, I think that's actually where we left the island then. And we've been journeying for a long time, figuring out where's this next. Now, if you have been around for any length of time, unless today is your first day, and if so, welcome. This is one of the most interesting messages for you to ever hear. And I hope you get something out of it. If you've been here for any length of time, you've witnessed firsthand the ripple effects those choices have had. Sporadic attendance, struggling kids ministries, declining financial support. You've seen it, you've felt it. I mean, I see this. I mean, we might as well name the thing in the room, can we? There's no people. Hi. The front row is scary. I agree. How many other people think the front row is scary? It is scary. You'd never have to sit in the front row. Does this make this the front row then if nobody... If nobody's sitting there? It's fine. Jen.
It's fine up here.
Oh. So you feel it, right? So what I want to do real quick is this is something that I know we've all been thinking about for a really long time. We just haven't been talking about it. And we haven't been talking about it because I think most of us didn't know how to gauge what was happening. And we also thought things were shifting. We see this, we feel this, we know this. We know that we're not who we once were, and we know we're going through change. So we recently sent out a survey to get an idea of what people were experiencing at one church. Sometimes surveys are super helpful, and sometimes they tell you everything you're doing wrong. And the thing that I've noticed is with the survey, it was helpful for us to at least try and put our best foot forward to identify some pain points. It makes sense. We love this community. This community isn't it's a nonprofit, yes, but it's not a business for us. Like, I hope that that's very, very understood. We love this community. This community has changed lives and my own. And so we identified some pain points, and what was interesting is the responses were vastly different on matters of opinions of belief, very vastly different. Musical preferences, oh my goodness. For every person that you'd get, play more of this, you'd get the complete opposite. Don't do that. And musical preferences and views of Jesus, which we will talk about in the future because that was fascinating. You had people on every spectrum, which made me go, okay, the fact that you are all in the same room and love one another, I am so proud of all of you. Yes. I am so proud of all of you because the tendency for any faith community is to be like, this is our doctrine, this is our statement of belief, now everyone fall in line and let's just be carbon copies of one another. We're not that here. But you'll notice when you're not that, it's really challenging sometimes to have a conversation and with somebody and you go, oh, wow, you view things very differently than me. Or, oh, you prefer this. And so I think we're learning just purely by accident. We're sort of an incubator on what it means to actually love somebody for their differences, but still work in unity. And I think that, I want to call it an accident, but let's just call it ruach, right? Spirit. It's this like incubator of love. Like, wait, that's weird. Okay, so we keep talking about love and unity. Let's try this. And I think that's what we've been finding out is like, we can do this. We can do hard things. And so the overwhelming response again and again and again that we kept seeing was this need for community. And I saw that word pop up so many times, community, 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 community. And when asking people what they were searching for in a church, this church, in a faith community, you know, teaching and music, all that's on the list, but that's further down the list. Community was number one, and it won by a landslide. And so I think what I'm picking out, which all of us know, is we're here because we have this sense of belonging. Let's be honest, most of us can have our own spiritual practice elsewhere. We want to join together and have an intentional spiritual communal practice together because we want community. And so I saw that, and the board saw that, all of us read that, and we thought to ourselves, we are deeply committed to that need. Deeply committed to that need. But we can't do it alone. We need your help. So we started the process of reviewing the budget, and here's where we talk about fun things. Everybody's like, oh, great. Trust me, I know. Talking about money is weird and awkward, and I'm going to quote Jen because she told me not to, but I'm going to. Here we can talk about sex and we can talk about money. Okay? I know it's awkward. Let it be awkward. We can do hard things. We've been taught we can't. And most of us, if we've grown up in any kind of religious tradition, those are the two words that we're like, nope, retreat. We can do this. So everybody take a deep breath with me. Excellent. That was more for me than you. So we spent countless hours reviewing the budget at the end of last year to prepare for our annual presentation. And we spent hours in board meetings looking over numbers, trying to also forecast and plan what's next for One Church. Who could we grow into? What could this look like? Things like being able to hire a part-time assistant pastor. Things like building our kids programs, youth programs, giving back to our local communities. We want to do that. We started mentioning all of these things and starting to just talk about ideas. And these were just a few of the ideas that were discussed. But then over the next few months, we continued refining the budget and looking at the current expense reports. And I'm going to be honest, the data painted a very clear picture. So we've seen an increase in expenses, and that's due to this new location. Rent is a little bit higher, and that's due to moving costs. But we've obviously seen a decrease in contributions. When you have less people, it's just obvious you tend to have less money. So it doesn't take a financial forecaster to understand that this isn't good. And putting out more than you are receiving will leave you with a deficit. And that sentence, I think you can apply to all facets of your life. Love, sex, money. If you are giving more than you're receiving, you're going to end up with a deficit, and that's where we've been at as a community. And after crunching the numbers, we had the harsh realization that this isn't sustainable. So our current budget, to talk actual numbers with you, our current budget is sent to a bare bones, right? This is with no margin. It costs roughly around $10,000 a month to keep things running as they are, just to survive. Some of you might be going, huh? We are one of the cheapest churches around. And I will say that. One of my friends is a pastor, and they're trying to raise $3 million. And I'm like, what could we do with $3 million? Like, feed people? Build homes? Like, what? I'm just talking $10,000. $10,000 a month just to keep things running as they are. Okay? And this is like survive. This is not any margin. Then our budget originally for 2019, this was originally what we were talking about. It projected to roughly around $13,000 a month to thrive. Now, our version of thriving was just what I mentioned. It still didn't have tons of margin, but enough to be giving someone a little bit for an assistant pastor position, helping our community, developing some programs. Here's the reality, though. We're currently averaging $6,000 a month. Or less, depending, in contributions, which means we're coming up short, and I'm, again, not a mathematician, but you don't need to be to do that, $4 to $5K a month, roughly, give or take. Obviously, no bueno, right? Doesn't take, obviously not good. And this isn't sustainable, and so if I can, I'd like to create a sense of urgency. I want you to hear me, One Church. There's a difference between urgency and panic. If you're feeling panic, breathe. We're going to be okay. I don't know how we're going to be okay. I need to say this before I forget. I commit to this mission 120%, even if it's 3 of us and we're meeting in a parking lot. I want you to know where my heart is at. I am in this no matter what it takes, no matter what it costs, no matter what. I'm in this because I see what it does for so many people. To me, this mission isn't even about me anymore. It's about all the letters, all the emails, all the people we see. It's about all of your faces. It's about our community. So I need you to know that for a minute and take a deep breath. I don't want to instill panic. I need to instill urgency. Because the harsh reality is that if we keep going this way, we won't sustain throughout the year. And that is hard for me to say. Because I'll be honest, I don't know what I would do without this community. I don't know what a lot of you would do without this community. I don't know what many of our viewers online, who are probably live streaming right now, will do without this community. And so currently, as it stands, let's just throw some rough numbers. And I want this to be approachable. I want this to be approachable. And so we'll try to talk about some of these things in a way that I hope can make some sense for us. Right now, there are roughly about 30 unique givers each month. Now, 30 unique means it's not the same person donating. Our attendance, lately it's a little less, but on average, we've been about 100 for a while. So we can do some rough math and say about 30% is giving. And so we have 70% that isn't, so the majority is not. Now, I want you to know I recognize not all of us can give. So if you're that person, please take that guilt and throw it away. I don't want you to own that guilt. There's people in here that can't. You have fixed incomes. You have situations that won't allow you to, and that's okay. That is not the point of this. This message is not about guilting you into giving. And if anything, that's one of the reasons why we don't talk about money here often at One Church. Because a lot of people in here, not everyone, but a lot of people in here have previous church baggage. You have previous hurts and church trauma. And one of those areas that can be a little bit tough is this message of you have to give. Because some of us have grown up in religion that's often used guilt to give money. And I think that using scripture, using God's blessings, and also using hell as motivators to do so are the worst things that we can do. And we never have, and we never will. Singer-songwriter David Crowder says these words that I love, that fear is no good reason to believe in anything at all. We're not going to fear anyone or guilt anyone to give, and I couldn't agree more with what he's saying. I don't want to guilt people into attendance, and I don't want to guilt people into giving. One of the things that I think is our blessing and our curse here at One Church is that we do say, go do your thing on Saturday. We don't mind if people miss Saturdays. We don't mind if we don't have this talk about money all the time. That's actually, I think, part of our greatest strength is because we don't make it about those things. We say, we want you to live your life. But then there's this downside of when you don't have this thing pushing you, it's not sometimes on your forefront and on your radar. It's also a lesson learned for myself as a new pastor here, and also this community, on ways that we can remember, we still need to approach the subject, that we're a nonprofit and we survive off donations. So we won't use fear. We won't use guilt, because quite frankly, that's gross. And I personally think that flies in the face of the liberating power of love. I do truly believe, though, that when we give out of gratitude, when we give because we can, because we're able, right? There's a difference between feeling forced to give and giving because you can and because you're able. That when you can give, and when you give because you find value in something, that allows that thing you're investing in to thrive, but it allows you to thrive. It's a different energy, a different motivator. So we've taken a step back. So let's get back to practicals. We've taken a step back. We've examined some ways we can save some money, because when you're in a situation like this, you have two choices. One is help, we need more money. And two is what are ways we can save on costs. And I want you to know in my opinion, both approaches are probably correct. So we've taken a quick step back and we've examined ways we can save money in the interim. We've been looking at probably the two largest costs, maybe the biggest variables, which is our rental agreement and my salary. And I want you to know that both are being looked at, so that you have an awareness, so that our staff, not just myself, our staff, all of these things we're talking about and negotiating and going, what can we do? Everybody with me? I know this is not your, yay, be inspired, be yourself kind of message. It's reality. And we're a family. We're a family. And that, to me, is like when we're a family and you're in a hard time, you say, let's get together and what can we do about this? And so I'm asking for your help, One Church, because I so strongly believe in this mission. As I mentioned before, it's affected me personally. It's affected so many of you and so many others that we will never, ever get to meet. And Steve shared a story of how he happened to accidentally save a friend's life simply just by showing up, if you will. And he likened that to how one church is. And I loved this mental imagery of one church being a lifeline, because that's actually very accurate. I have met numerous folks that have genuinely said, this space has saved my life. And I know that I'm not alone in seeing that. And I know it not only because of this lifeline, I see this reflected in how you all love. So I want to pause and let it be known that it's not all about one church. Honestly, it's about what you allow in this space. One church is a church, but it's you human beings. You have been willing to put your egos aside. You have been willing to put your heart forward. And you've been willing to come into this space and say, we want to come together and love well. And it's my heart and desire, I keep having this imagery as we're birthing newness, that we would be a midwife to love, that we would birth love. We need that in this time. And this community at large, not just us, the community at large needs this place, a place that's spiritually diverse, a place that's unabashedly affirming of all people, not just LGBTQ people, but all people. This community around us needs a safe space that no matter who you are, where you are, who you love, what you believe, that you belong. And so I want you to know, talking about money in a church is never one that anyone likes to do. But to me, this place is way more than church. I don't even like the word church because I feel like it so falls short for who we are and who we've become. It's become a loving, caring, insightful group of people. And it's never, this mission doesn't exist. I need you to know this mission doesn't exist so we can collect money. But we do need money to keep the mission going. So I would love to see us thrive. I would love to see us be able to grow into our vision. And I would love to see us give back. And if I'm honest, I'll get into some of the nitty-gritty of like ways we can give. We'll talk about that. But I also want to pause for a minute and let you know that this whole situation, if I'm honest, has sort of been this spirit ruach moment for me, where we've been trying to force one church into this direction for a very long time, and it almost just seems like we were trying to walk through quicksand. And so we kept going with it and going with it and going with it, and we started calculating, well, maybe this is why people aren't coming as much, or maybe that, and it almost felt like the perfect storm of all the things happening. And I had this almost, I don't even know what to call it other than a spirit, a moment, a God moment of like, yes, I know. I'm almost this, yeah, I know, and I'm doing this. That's the feeling I felt. Now you're probably like, wait, what do you mean? God's killing this church? No, first of all, we're not dying, so don't get that in your head. Second, I felt like we were trying to force this newness that's happening here into an old model. Now, what's ironic and really weird is when I started this series, I didn't have this in mind because I didn't even know this is where we were financially. I had a different direction, all about be you, own you, become yourself. And then at the end of this, it went, oh, my goodness, here's where we are. And I thought, how ironic, because we do have this newness. And I think sometimes we've been trying to force it into an old model. If community is your number one thing you're looking for, why do you sit and listen to me speak forever? Have you ever asked yourself that? I love to speak clearly. Thank you for entertaining me with that laugh. I love to do this. I will continue to do this. I think there's importance in learning and teaching, but friends, what you're after is each other. What you're after is real human connection. What you're after is growth and spirituality. And I thought, well, we might have to get creative here. And so I don't know entirely what this next season will look like. I'm on the canoe with you, and I am paddling as hard as I can. But I can tell you that if we don't change this number with this budget, and our expenses, rather, we're going to have to change things. We're going to have to get creative. And that's just how it goes. We're going to have to get creative. And luckily for me or you, I don't know, that's the world I work in, is a lot of creativity. I'm hoping that'll lend itself to problem solving. I don't know. But what I want to encourage you to get more specific during this time is, while we are in this season of trying to figure out how to sustain, I want to invite you in to helping us. Because if we can't do all of that work, we don't have all the answers. We want to invite you into this. And there's ways you can help. I know, I don't like guilting anyone, but I know in the 70% of you, I know that some of you can give. I know in the 70% of you, some of you might go, I can give $5. $5 goes a long way. When you put your $5 with your $5 with your $5 with your $5, and so on and so forth. There's real tangible things that we have to get and we have to pay for. There's this space. And trust me, if we are this small and get smaller, obviously the clear answer would be, well, maybe we don't need to be in a room this size anymore. We'll get creative. But what I want is to start, before we get into how do we cut things, because I never think that's a healthy way to look at things. I think we go, how do we keep this thing going? And so I want to invite you into a space that if you aren't a unique giver, maybe you've thought about being one before. Now's your time. Now's really your time. If you can't, but you know someone that can, invite them into the conversation. If you can't, but you're really great at fundraising, email me, Angie@onechurch.com. If you can't, but you're willing to give of some kind of idea or resource, please let us know. How many of you find value in this place? How many of you would feel a little lost without this place? How many of you call this place home? Me too. Me too. So it sort of feels like, oh, you're going to foreclose on your home. That means everything to you. But you get creative. And I want you to know that what's so weird and ironic about this is I feel at the same time like we're just getting started. And I've been having this bubble up in me, the thing I was talking about, this flow, this spirit, this intuition. I've been having that bubble up in me for quite some time of we're just getting started. And so I've been sitting here going, okay, Spirit, I hear you and I trust you. That if this old model needs to go away, give us a new one then that we can step into, or help us with people that can sustain it. And so I want to do the fun but hard task of mentioning some ways you can give. And I just want to ask all of you that as you go throughout this week, please reflect on this. And I'll be honest, even if it meant, some of you might think I'm stupid for saying this, but even if it meant we can't operate the way we operate, please don't give out of guilt. Please. Give because you want to. Give because this place has value to you. Let that be your source. Because I think where we're headed is somewhere awesome. Now, there's some ways you can give. Giving is easier than ever. Real cheesy. The company we partnered up with to do our giving, they have these graphics. And I was like, oh, am I going to be like Vanna White? Giving is easier than ever. Now that I just clobbered you over the head with this terrible news, now give. We're just going to walk through it. So it is actually, if I stop the fooling around, giving is actually easier than ever right now. So if you've ever given online to us, it's kind of been a little bit clunky if you've used, because we use PayPal. And it can be a little, anyone ever had some issues? And if you want reoccurring payments, sometimes I've heard some people that have said they've had some issues with their reoccurring payments. So we decided that's not super helpful for us. And getting donations through PayPal is like living in 2000, I don't know, 2000. Let's just stop there. If you have a cell phone, this will be easy for you. So go ahead and show that next slide for me. One of the ways so there's 4 ways you can give. There's mobile giving, online giving, text giving, and in-service, which we've been doing for a long time, cash and check. Again, like I said, we don't mention money much around here, but in the very back, we have a space that you can go ahead and give if you're a person that still writes checks in 2019, we've got that for you. For the rest of you that might be more digitally oriented, we've got 4 ways to give. Let's go ahead to that 3 ways. We've got that first slide, which is mobile giving. You can go ahead and download the Tithely app. I give you permission to play on your phone right now. You can text all your friends and be like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Download the Tithely app either with Google Play or the App Store. Now, Tithely does have a period in it. It's tithe, period, L-Y. Sorry, I was having a bunny trail of thoughts. As someone that has done SEO, I was thinking that's not very good. But anyway, download the Tithely app. And in this app, you'll go ahead and search for the app, and then you'll search One Church once you get the app. I'll post these also. Side note, if you get our email, you're going to get an email with these directions. Also, our Facebook group will have that as well, and then we'll have some steps on our website. So if you don't get these tonight, you'll have more information later. So you search for One Church once you download the Tithely app. Once you get the app, you can find us, and then you simply click Give to start. From there, it'll prompt you on some giving directions. So that's one option. Search for the Tithely app, search for One Church, okay? The next way you can give is online giving. We've been doing that for a long time. Go to onechurch.com and click Give. The link now is through Tithely and not PayPal. So you can go ahead and go straight there. It will ask you to set up a profile, but that's what you would do with anything, PayPal, any of the thing. It'll have quick information. Go ahead and put that in. The last way... or is that the last one on there? No, the last one is text giving. This, I think, is probably one of the easiest. So you literally text the word give to this phone number, 480-900-1824. Once you text that word give, it will, again, prompt you a quick web screen. You can fill in your information, and you'll never have to do that again. You fill out your information once as a profile. You'll never have to do it again. And then anytime you want, you can save that phone number. And anytime you want, let's say instead of getting Starbucks, you're like, I've got an extra $5. You can go ahead and just text $5 to that number and give. I think that's probably an easier way for a lot of us that can give, especially in this Netflix and Hulu generation. Like being able to just kind of casually give here and there when we can is helpful. So these are all ways you can give. Now, I did say, being able to give $5, $10, $20 here is helpful. You can clearly see, though, when we're examining this, that $5, $10, $20, if we're really honest, we need big givers. We need folks that are willing and able to contribute larger funds if possible, or we need more folks, or we get creative. How is everyone feeling? I feel the need to ask this question, even though I know that might be dangerous. Good? Hanging in there. Okay. I almost feel like doing a very but I'll probably kill myself if I do that, stepping on here and being like, let's lead the charge. That's how I feel. If I could describe what I'm feeling inward is this is not good. This is a bummer, but I just have this feeling like we're just getting started. We're just getting started. And I think we can re-examine the way we do things. Churches are dying, and they're dying quickly. And I think it's no surprise. And I think we re-examine, well, maybe we can relook at the way we're doing some of these things. But if you find this important in any way, shape, or form, I just want to leave you with that simple request, is help if you can. Share with someone that you think can. And at this time, I want to invite Steve to come up. I want you to know I love you all. I want you to know that I said it before, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes. That I believe in this mission. I believe in all of you. That was me, yeah? That was weird. I think someone just streamed the live stream. I say that to say, Dawn, this is why I love this community. Honestly, people. And I have such hope that this is headed somewhere amazing. I just can't describe what that amazing is going to look like. But I know it's headed somewhere amazing. And I want to take all of you with me. Please don't fall out of the canoe.
I've had the honor over the past, so I've been here for about 13 months now, and I've had the honor of getting to know Angie a little bit and a bunch of you as well during that time. And I just want to vouch for her, if my word means anything to you. She is an amazing leader for this community who has sacrificed a ton to be here. And I will follow that canoe, 100%. So yeah, I just want to kind of close us out. I'll lead us in a little prayer in a second, but just had a few thoughts, and since I have a microphone, I guess I get to give thoughts. I walked into this place 13 months ago, and this was the first place I was ever whole. This is the first place I was ever 100% myself. And it's weird because since then, a lot has changed in my life, and I'm much more just open in general with everybody. And I kind of have forgotten sometimes what that feels like. I've forgotten what it's like to step into a place and to actually be able to breathe. And here's what I know. Because I hang out, I used to be a youth minister for like 14 years, so I hang out with like 20 and 30-somethings all the time, just friends I collected along the way. And there are so many people who need this space. They just don't know it's here. This room would be packed out every single week if people simply knew this space existed, because so many people are going through these questions and these doubts. They don't feel at home at the traditional churches they were at, but they don't know there's another place to go. And so my hope is that 6 months from now, the person walks through this door who can finally breathe for the first time. That a year from now, someone walks through this door and they can breathe for the first time in their lives. And it's going to take the whole community to make that happen. But I believe in this community more than I believe in most things. And I think together we can do this. Are you with me? Awesome. If you wouldn't mind just bowing your heads, if you're comfortable with that, I'll just lead us in a quick prayer and then we'll close out with a song. God, I thank you. I thank you for this space. I thank you for the place we can come and breathe, where so many different people from so many diverse backgrounds can come and experience love and acceptance, maybe for the first time in their entire lives. I thank you that this is a place where transformation happens, where we become ourselves, where we can become more whole. And so we want to see this continue. And so, Spirit, as you guide us, would you sustain us as well? In your name we pray. Amen.